Let's continue with the symbolism of the Bible a bit more, since the next part is kind of interesting. In order to have an easier time following my interpretations, you should watch the previous parts in this series first. Genesis 6 begins with, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." Notice that only daughters are mentioned to be born to men here, meaning something like concrete doctrines or ideas, but not reasonings. And then the sons of God, the aspects of the mind that are supposed to be conscious and developed, start to take these problematic doctrines and ideas as wives, as their preferred knowledge. Historically, it probably implied that the priest class of that time were attracted to the corrupt and flawed doctrines of the time that had emerged culturally by people without wisdom or true understanding. To this, YHWH, the perception based on the principles of ultimate reality, clarifies, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Here we get a statement about what future development would look like, which is basically what predictions are, that consciousness can reach completion through a state of 3, which is what the number 120 reduces to. 1 plus 2 plus 0 gives us the single digit 3. The comment about the spirit or understanding not always making an effort with human consciousness, because it is also on the level of flesh or the physical, seems to refer to the impermanence of higher wisdom and understanding in human beings. Then it says, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." The giants or mighty men of renown spoken about here are likely referring to big egos, people with a conqueror mentality and such. Basically people or aspects of the psyche with no sense of limits or humility. "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil constantly." Yeah, that sentence basically leaves no doubt as to the state of development being very low among people at that time. "And it repented YHWH that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And YHWH said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them." Now this is interesting, since it basically implies a complete reset of the earlier attempt to structure the mind into conscious perfection. So historically we can assume that the first attempt to create a culture of wisdom eventually deteriorated to the point there was no saving it. That, quite frankly, does not bode well for anyone attempting to create a culture of consciousness and wisdom. But maybe they originally made some mistake. Maybe something could be improved the next time. Let's see what it says here. "But Noah found grace in the eyes of YHWH. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth." So this implies that historically there was someone or some community that had retained the conscious way of life. And this community in turn gave birth to 3 new future communities, referred to as Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It could also refer to 3 new types of spiritual paths, perhaps the foundation of 3 new religions. Anyway, The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. The earth here basically means the mind, the way the conscious mind had become corrupt in people. Earth, as part of the four elements, signifies a result, a state. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shall pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof. With lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. Here we arrive at the really esoteric part, since the description of the ark must signify the organization of the preservation of the higher wisdom and knowledge of the time, so that it would survive the cleansing. As I have pointed out before, the Bible is a synthesis of spiritual meaning in the text, meaning a psychological meaning, and also a historical meaning. Psychologically, the ark likely refers to the organization of a system for keeping the wisdom and knowledge in memory. Historically, the ark likely refers to the creation of a preservation complex, perhaps something like the recently discovered megalithic site at Göbekli Tepe, which is filled with decorations, especially with reliefs of wild animals. Mysteriously, this Neolithic site seems to have been intentionally buried, like a time capsule of sorts, following the experience of a great global cataclysm that involved a meteorite and the rapid melting of the ice sheets covering large parts of the world. This great global cataclysm is likely what gave birth to the large number of flood myths that exist in various cultures around the globe, including the biblical story about Noah and the flood. That length, breadth, and height of the ark likely signify something spiritual and psychological can be deduced from the fact that the New Jerusalem in heaven and the temple are also given numerical measurements like this in other places of the Bible. For example, 350 and 30 reduces to 12, and then the number 3 if you put them together. And 3 is the sacred number. Anyway, the precise meaning regarding things like the window and door of the ark is practically impossible to guess at after all this time has passed and everything that has been lost and distorted throughout history. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth and destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. That it says even I signifies that even reality can act with destructive force and use the lower element of water. And everything that is in the earth refers to everything that is in the mind, the constructed mind. But with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. Again, this means that the preservers of wisdom, whether historically or psychologically, will remain unharmed. Sons are usually types of consciousness or practices, and wives are usually something like the knowledge or wisdom they have attached themselves to. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shall thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. The animals spoken of here are, of course, not literal animals. The animals referred to here are of the 4 categories of psychological forces symbolized by animals in the Bible. The fowls are intellectual forces, such as thoughts. The cattle is controlled or kind-hearted emotions. Notice that it doesn't mention beasts, the angry emotions here. Notice also that it specifies every living thing. Some animals, or even people and spirits, can be animated and do things in the stories while still being referred to as dead. Something that is living typically refers to something that has been touched by or influenced by higher principles and wisdom. Notice that the 4th category of animals are also not mentioned, the egoic or foolish aspects belonging to the sea. They don't need to be preserved, of course, since they don't belong to the structured mind or earth in the first place. In fact, it is by their chaotic element that reality will destroy the remnants of what had been built. By emphasizing 2 of every sort shall thou bring into the ark, I take it to mean that the developed mind had 2 aspects developed in each psychological force. 2 developed sides to thoughts, 2 developed sides to emotions, and 2 developed sides to sensations or basic desires. One could speculate that one side was the passive detachment from thoughts, emotions, and basic desires, while the other was the controlled channeling of thoughts, emotions, and desires into the benefit of personal and cultural development. But that would just be a guess. Controlled channeling of thoughts, emotions, and desires into beneficial motivations cannot be achieved without also some passive detachment from them, so as to not get lost in passions and ideas too much. Finally, it says, "And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten." I guess food here refers to the nourishment of the result of the wisdom collected and preserved. "And thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he." And that was Genesis 6. Hope you found this interpretation useful.